Okay, you tell me, Akshay, from which chapter do you want to start? The first?
Yes, ma'am. First chapter
Right?
itself, ma'am.
First chapter. Okay. Now, first of all, you were facing issue in the circular flow one, right? On that day,
Sorry, ma'am.
circular flow.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right. So we'll just start from the national income, right? So circular flow. So first of all, we will understand what is circular flow and all that, right? So let's just start.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, circular flow. What is this, ma'am? See, in an economy, whenever you generate something, there is an equal reaction for that, right? So, like whatever you will be, like for example, money, right? Like for example, this was a person, a businessman. He is generating income, and then he's paying to someone else. Then that person is paying. Like that, it keeps on going, right? It's not like, for example, you are getting the money and you are saving it. No, somewhere you will also spend that money, right? So that's why circular flow of income, it refers to a cycle of generation of income in the production process, its distribution among the factor of production, and finally, its circulations from household to firms in the form of consumption expenditure on goods and service by firm. Clear? You got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Basically a cycle, right? Now, principle of circular flow of income. So receipt and payment across different sectors are always equal. Corresponding to each real flow, I told you what is real flow, right? Real nominal flow and that I told you GDP, right? So real flow means actually where you are utilizing the money. In one direction, there is a money flow of income in the opposite direction. Clear? So let's just understand. Okay. There are basically the facts, right? Land, yes. Labor,
Yes, ma'am.
entrepreneur, right? And one more person, tell me. Land, labor, entrepreneur, and one more thing is there. Can you recall it?
Ma'am, capital, ma'am.
Yes. Right? So all this, right? So an entrepreneur will basically start the services, right? He will start that, okay, I need this, I need that, like that, right? And from that, in return of that, he also needs something to start, right? So over here, this land. And let's just understand this by an example. For example, this is an entrepreneur, right? He basically, what he did, he started a business, right? For this, what he basically did, that I want this, I want that, right? The firm, right?
Yes,
And this is
ma'am.
the household. So in two sector economy, what we are going to do, we are going to only discuss about two sector. There are four. You can see all this, government sector, private sector. Now coming first, okay. Let's just forget about everything. First of all, you should need to understand there are four sector in economy, right? One is the government sector, right? One is the private sector, right? One is the, tell me, government sector, private sector, and other.
Ma'am, mixed sector, right, ma'am?
No.
Oh, no, ma'am. Government, private, and which one, ma'am?
Think. Household
Uh, yes, ma'am. Household and then in
and the,
industrial, right, ma'am? I think
no. Then the
producers.
external sector,
Oh, yes, yes.
right?
Yes,
Where
external
export and
sector. Yes,
import,
ma'am. Yes,
right?
yes, ma'am.
External sector. So these are basically the four sector, right? But when we are discussing about this, we will only discuss about these two sector, private and household. Clear? In two sectors. So
Yes,
basically,
yes,
if
yes, ma'am.
somebody asks you how many type sectors are there, government sector, private sector, household sector, external sector, right? But when we are dealing
Yes, ma'am.
about circular flow, we are only dealing about two, which is private and the household. I hope I have made myself clear,
Yes, ma'am.
right? Okay. Now, one very, very important thing. For example, this is a company, government company, right? Like, for example, government office. Okay. This is a person, Sohan. He is working here. Right? So this Sohan belongs to which? Among these four sectors, Sohan belongs to which?
Ma'am, could you,
Which sector?
ma'am, if he's working in
For
ma'am,
example,
government sector then, right, ma'am?
uh, no.
Ma'am, could you
The
repeat the question
Sohan,
once more,
see,
ma'am?
this is government of. Okay, the question is, this is a government office, like government organization. Sohan is working in a government office. So if I will ask you that Sohan belongs to which sector, government sector, private sector, household sector, external sector, where it would be, like where you will lie that.
Ma'am, it has to be government sector only, right, ma'am?
No, I'll tell you. Sohan belongs to household. You know who is government? Sohan is working here, but that doesn't mean this whole company belongs to Sohan.
Yes, ma'am.
Getting the difference?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Right?
ma'am. So
Sohan is
yes,
only
okay, got it,
working
ma'am.
here. So he belongs to household only. Right? The government itself belongs to government sector, nobody else. Right? Getting the difference?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. For example, if this is a private office, right? Akshay, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear, ma'am.
Okay. If it is a private sector, like I am the owner, right? That means I belongs to private sector. But if somebody else is working here in private
And
or
household sector, right, ma'am?
that belongs to household. So I
Yes,
hope you got the difference, because mostly what people think that if I am working over there, I belong to government sector. No, I hope you know got the difference. That see,
yes, I got it, ma'am. I got it.
right? They are getting a share of it, not everything, right? So this is what you need to do. Okay.
Yes,
Now
ma'am.
all this thing, four sectors. Now you should know there are, first of all, let's just do about goods. Okay. So do you know what are goods? What are two types of goods? Tell me. Any idea?
Ma'am, two types of goods, consumer and industrial, right, ma'am?
No. First one is intermediate goods,
And consumer goods, right,
right?
ma'am?
And the final goods. Okay. Okay. Goods, intermediate goods, final goods. Okay. Got
Yes,
it?
ma'am.
So over here, intermediate goods and final goods. Now this final goods are further classified. Okay. This final goods over here, it's like consumer good, which is consumption good, right? And
Yes,
capital.
ma'am.
Fine. Now, this
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
consumption good are further classified durable good,
And
non-durable,
non-durable. And services, right, ma'am?
right? So this is what you have to remember. Goods, intermediate goods and final goods. Intermediate goods are basically, they will be further transformed, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Final goods are basically, like for example, I made Python gaze are used by consumer. They are also known as consumer goods. Okay? Used by
Okay, ma'am.
consumer. Okay? Now, let's just take an example. For example, steel. Okay? Steel is an intermediate good. Why? Because this steel will be using, for example, I just made this rod from steel, right? So it is going to have, like further it will be transformed.
Further transformed, yes.
Yes. But for goods, final goods, let's just take, for example, cake. This is a final good, right? But for example, you bought the cake and you ate. So that is your consumption good. But for example, you bought the cake to resell it. So that is your capital goods. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So final goods. So basically, it depends on the use. How you describe whether it's a consumption good or the capital good. Right? And durable, you know, basically it should have 3+ shelf life, less than 3 years, and it is services, you know that. Right? Now,
Yes,
when
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
one very important difference comes over here is consumption good, consumption versus capital, right? The very first difference over here, right? So let's just take washing machine, right? Let's just take washing machine. For example, for washing machine consumption over here for household use, right? I bought a
Yes,
washing
ma'am.
machine and I am using it for my house, so that is my consumption. That's in that case I will say that washing machine is a consumption good. But over here, for example, I am just bought it for laundry purpose, right? Like I just in a hostel, I just started the laundry purpose with this washing machine. So that is my capital good. Clear? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Clear, ma'am.
Right? Okay, so this is what you got, right? So you can quickly make it a table, like just write revision and just quickly. These are some important tips, like, the flow chart and all that. So you can just make it. No need to make the above one, just make goods. Okay, goods, intermediate goods like this so that you get an idea. Okay, then I will
Yes, ma'am.
go to the next slide.
Ma'am, I wrote this, ma'am.
Okay. Now, after this, so I hope you got the difference, right?
Yes, 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 ma'am.
Okay. Now, what we have to do? Now let's just move to the fourth sector. You already know the fourth sector, right? But I'll write it here again. Okay. So that there's a flow. Okay. So four sectors you already know, right? Now can you recall it? First,
Ma'am, government, private, household, and external, ma'am.
private, household,
And external.
yes, external. Okay, and I already told you about that the thing, right? So over
Yes, ma'am.
here, Rahul, now we are discussing about the circular flow. Okay, so in this circular flow, right? So we are only discussing about two sector, which is the private sector and household sector. Okay, like for example, this is an entrepreneur basically who is starting it. Okay, so of course, if you need to start something, you need some input. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? If you want to start a factory or something, you need something. So first of all, there should be one entrepreneur. Right? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Second, they need a labor. Yes. Third, they need capital. And fourth, they need the natural resource, which is raw material. Right? Natural resource.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, natural resource means raw material, right? And raw material, land and all that. Okay, so this is what you basically, these all basically belongs to the sector, right? Now, over here, if, for example, an entrepreneur, whenever he will start an industry, in return, what he will get? He will get a profit. Yes. For example,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
started a company. Labor who will work, in return, he will get wages. If you have invested your capital, you will get the interest, right? And if you go this natural resources, like you carry raw material and land and all that, you pay rent. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now these are the things that you have to keep in mind. Now, very important things. After this, let's just start. So these are the input and these are the things that they will be getting. Now let's just start. First of all, like this is private sector. Okay. And this one is household sector. Okay. So household sector, basically what they did, this household sector basically provided all them of, right? The entrepreneur, the labor and everything they provided to private sector, right? What they provided entrepreneur, they provided the capital. Yes. They provided the labor. They provided the land, for example. That
Yes, ma'am.
to private sector. In return, private sector basically what they, to the entrepreneur, they gave the profit, right? To capital, they paid the interest, right? For labor, they paid the wages. And for land, they paid the rent. Yes. Now, first the money was here, right? Then this money shifted to here. Yes. Now, of course, they need to buy something. Of course, these household sectors need to buy, for example, they are producing cakes, right? Now, this household sector needs to buy this cake. So, whatever money they got, for example, 100 rupees in return, they got this 100 rupees. Now, what they will do, this 100 rupees, they will do expenditure. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And in return, they will get the goods and services. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
The
Yes, ma'am.
cycle goes like this. Again, then they will give it to them and then they will pay, then they will spend, then they will, like this cycle keeps on going. Clear? Got it? So this
Yes,
is
ma'am.
the
Clear, ma'am.
circular flow of sector. You can just draw it like this and then I will give you the definition. Okay?
Ma'am, I drew this, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you can see this one. So now you'll just give it a reading. I've already told you everything, right? So you'll just give it a reading
Yes, ma'am.
from here. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I read this, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I read this, ma'am.
Okay, from here itself, there comes two terms. One is the leakage and one is the injection. Okay, read that as well. And the phases of circular flow of national income. Then you are done. Okay, till here you have to start.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I read till here, ma'am.
Okay, now the last phase. These two paragraphs, then you are done. We'll just start with the, then I just need to give you one definition for capital. What particular term you will say that this is a capital good. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I read this, ma'am.
Okay. So now I'm just going to give you a definition for capital. Okay, the one which you will say capital, it is a capital, right? So you should, first of all, you should like, it has three characteristics basically, right? So I'll just mention it. Capital. First of all, first is uh, capital is basically the output of man-made process. Okay. So a human being is going to make it. That's a capital. Okay. Second, it again act as input for further production. Clear? And that will be to be sold in the market. To be sold in the market. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Third is while acting as an input, it does not get transformed. Fine. Now, when we were dealing with this over here, intermediate good, I told you that they are further, transformed. And capital good also, they are further somewhere contributing, right? Like, for example, washing machine. But the only thing is that the difference between intermediate good and capital good is that intermediate goods further transform and lose their identity. For example, the steel, you made this jar. After this, can you tell me where is the steel? No, right? But for example, washing machine, you are using that washing machine, but that washing machine is not losing its identity, right? So that's why this is how you differentiate between the intermediate good and the capital good. Clear? So it has three things. First of all, for example, let's just take washing machine, right? Washing machine, output of man-made process, only human being made it. Second, it again act as an input, right? I am just from this washing machine, you are cleaning the clothes, right? So again, third, whenever it is working as an input, it is not getting transformed. So these are basically the characteristics of a capital good. Clear?
Yes, ma'am. Should I write it down now, ma'am?
Yes. Sometime like I think few in PYQ it basically came like write the three characteristics of capital good, and students were like they already knew that capital good is this, but they were unable to write 3 points. So I just don't want this to be happen. So that's why. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I wrote it, ma'am.
Okay. Now, after this, what was the other thing we decided we'll do?
Ma'am,
GDP,
I
na?
think, yes, ma'am, GDP, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now this one. Hmm. Nominal GDP and real GDP, I already told you. Just read it, give it a reading for the reference. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I read this, ma'am.
Okay. Now, these are the formula. I hope you know that, right? Real
Yes,
GDP.
ma'am. Let me just write it down, ma'am, once.
Yes.
Ma'am, I wrote it, ma'am.
Okay. Now, next one is GDP deflator. Okay, so GDP deflator measures the average level of prices of all the goods and services that make up the GDP. It is used to eliminate the effect of price change and determine the real change in physical output, right? So this is the only factor that will differentiate whether it's a nominal GDP or the real GDP, whatever the gap it is, right? So GDP deflator divided nominal GDP divided by real GDP multiplied by 100, and this is how. So you can note it down and you can write about GDP deflator. Okay. Sometime instead of
Okay, ma'am.
asking you nominal or something, they can ask you what is GDP deflator, or in numericals also they can give you the question.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I wrote it.
Okay. Now, the most important thing is GDP and the welfare. So GDP, whenever I say G, is used as an index of welfare of the people. Welfare means sense of material well-being among the people. It is influenced by many factors like consumption level, the types of goods and service, economic factor, environmental pollution, loss and order, all this. This line is very, very important. Higher GDP is generally taken as greater welfare of the people. However, GDP may not be taken as satisfactory measure of economic welfare due to certain limitation. Very, very, very important questions comes from here. What are, either they will be asking you the direct question that what are the limitation of GDP, right? Or they will be asking you this, why GDP is not taken as a satisfactory measure of economic welfare. So you will write GDP, higher GDP generally taken as a greater welfare of the people, right? But GDP is not a satisfactory measure to economic welfare because it has certain limitation. So two type, like they can either directly ask you limitation or they can like give you the statement and then they expect you to write the answer for limitation. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, understood. Ma'am, so should I write it down, ma'am? Because I think these are given in the notes, right, ma'am?
First is the I think you have written this. I think so.
Yes, ma'am. It is there, ma'am.
I think you have written it. You have written it. I think you will just only repeat. Yes, because I think in the class we did it, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
what
Yes,
you will
ma'am.
do when you are revising it, write the headings. No need to write the explanation. Explanation you can learn from here. So when wherever I'm focusing more, that like the revision part which I'm doing in the class. So you just need to just go through it, right? And apart from, if you're not making error, you will see at the end you cannot revise everything, right? So you just
Yes,
now it's
ma'am. Yes,
time to
ma'am.
make the short notes for yourself,
Okay. Understood, ma'am.
right? So at the end, so that just like GDP welfare, you should remember everything. The GDP, from GDP, what type of question can come, limitation can come, so the numerical come, like this, you should know, right? So first,
Yes, ma'am.
does
Understood.
not include the rate of growth of population. So first of all, real GDP indicate overall performance of the country. So earlier 10 people were working, the GDP was 100. But now 20 people are working and the GDP is 150. That doesn't mean that, the GDP has increased, but it's only the population. So over here, the per capita real GDP equals to total real GDP divided by population. So over here, if the rate of growth of population is higher than the rate of growth of real GDP, then it will decrease the per capita availability of goods and services, which adversely affect the economic welfare. So this is the first drawback of GDP. That's why you don't take GDP as a factor. First of all, does not reflect distribution of GDP. There is inequality in the distribution of income in the economy. GDP does not take into account changes in inequalities in distribution of income. If we increase the per capita real income of GDP, the inequality of distribution of GDP increases. Rich become richer. I told you, for example, 10 people are earning, their salary increased, right? So that means they are becoming richer, but the other people who are unemployed, they are not getting the job, so they do not
Yes.
distribute. Does not include non-economic and monetary exchange. Like for example, as a mother, like my mom is a housemaker, right? She is doing everything, cooking and washing and everything, but her efforts are not being included in the GDP. But the same thing, if I'll hire a maid, right, she will contribute, the same thing will be contributed. So does not include non-economic and non-monetary exchange. In return, we are not giving, like as my mom is a housemaker, we are not paying her, right? So that means her efforts are
Yes,
not
ma'am.
include, right? Next, does not include externalist. Very, very important. From here, when I was giving the exam, this question came, what are externalists, right? So external, for example, this is a factory, right? They are producing cakes, right? So they are producing cakes. So this, whatever quantity of cakes they will be producing, that you will include in GDP, that okay, they contributed 200 rupees GDP, right? But the pollution they will be causing, are they paying for it? Definitely not, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is what. So external refers to the benefit. It can be benefit as well as harm, right? For example, let's just take an example of a like for example, I taught you something, right? In return, you are paying it to me, right? You paid it to me. Now, after this, for example, your younger brother came to you and he asked you that, please tell me this and this point. So you are like that, you taught him, right? So over here, are you paying, like you are sharing the knowledge, are you paying for that particular services to me? Definitely not, right? You paid whatever I taught you, but if you are resharing it, you are not paying it to me again, right? For example, in school, whatever you learned, you paid one time fees, and after that, no matter whether you are sharing it with me, your friends, or anywhere, you are not again paying them, right? So that is basically the
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
benefit you are
ma'am.
not. For example, the highways, you constructed a highway, like lot of, so over there was a lot of destruction of trees, nobody paid for them, right? But thousands of people are using that highway, but are they paying for it daily? No,
No,
right?
ma'am.
So this is what. So externalist refers to the benefit or harms accompanying the production process for which no payment is made or received, right? So positive are, these are the benefit that accompany the production process for which the no payment is received. They are not included in GDP, although they result in increase in the welfare, right? The highway somewhere is contributing, right? But they are not paying it somewhere, and that is not contributing, right? Negative
Yes,
are,
ma'am.
these are the negative effect which accompany the production process and decrease the welfare of the people, right? Like for example, the industrial are set up, right? They, though they are contributing to the GDP, but they are also causing the natural environment, the degradation, right? But still, that is not included anywhere, right? So first of all, does not consider change in price. GDP never highlights that because of change of price, the GDP increase, no, right? Then composition of GDP. GDP includes different types of product like clothes, food article, police, military services, house, etc. Some of these products contribute more to the welfare of the people, like food, clothes, etc., whereas other products like police services and military services, etc., may comparatively contribute less and may not directly affect the standard of living of people. Right? So this is what. Next, contribution of some product in GDP may be negative. So GDP include all the final good, whether it's a milk or liquor, right? So for example, even if
Yes,
you're
yes, yes,
selling
ma'am.
liquor, that will be engaged somewhere because it is at last getting the meaning, right? So this is what. So now today, what is your task? Basically, at the end of the, like after this, you can give yourself a time, right? Today's task over here, right? First comes from circular flow. You should know what is circular flow and everything, right? Second, a GDP and welfare part should be clear. Fine.
Okay, ma'am.
So this is your homework. Once you are done, just share me that, ma'am, I'm done. Just send me the message. I'll get to know that, okay, you know. This means you have to learn this,
Yes,
right?
yes,
The
yes, ma'am.
question comes orally, you can tell that these are the points, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is what, and from next class, I'll just give it a recap. And if I have any question for this, I'll just share it to you on WhatsApp. So tomorrow I will take your morning class then, right? I'll just let
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Ma'am, what time,
Morning
ma'am?
class, yeah, tomorrow morning I will like, I'll like around 1 o'clock. You tell me what time would be suitable for you because 2 o'clock I have a class, 2 to 3, na?